This is a map of the typical inauguration parade route that the president travels down with the help of thousands of security personnel. The parade starts at the north end of the Capitol building and then makes its way down Constitution Avenue before entering Pennsylvania Avenue, up 15th Street, and then ending at the White House. This 1.5-mile-long route is typically the most heavily guarded event in U.S. history, and the Secret Service assures the public that they have everything completely under control.
No city handles large-scale events better than the District of Columbia.
While Trump supporters and other Americans are basically saying run for the hills.
But if I were in charge of the security for the inauguration on January 20th, I would be screaming as loud as I could to cancel it.
Well, this man's wish basically came true because as of 11:30 a.m. Eastern on January 17th, Donald Trump and his inauguration committee announced that the inauguration would be moving indoors, not necessarily because of security concerns, but actually because of the freezing temperatures expected. Now this is a little disclaimer, but I was actually getting ready to post a full video on how exactly the Secret Service and other law enforcement agencies were preparing to have a secure inauguration outdoors, where Trump would have been sworn in outside the Capitol Rotunda. I also traveled down to DC myself and walked the entire inauguration parade route, mapping out where sniper locations would be, where security checkpoints would be set up, and took videos of all the extremely important measures that the Secret Service puts in place to keep the president safe. With the inauguration ceremony and parade now being held indoors, well, I had to basically change up the whole video. So how this video is now structured is the first half we will dive into how the indoor inauguration will look and the new security preparations that are being made, and then the second half of the video will be what the typical inauguration security looks like at one of the most potentially dangerous days for any US president. Now, even though the inauguration ceremony is being held inside the Capitol Rotunda and the parade is being moved inside Capital One Arena, there are still significant security risks in play. The only other time the inauguration ceremony took place inside the Capitol Rotunda was in 1985 for Ronald Reagan's inauguration. During Reagan's ceremony, only 96 people were invited, compared to the hundreds of thousands or even millions that typically attend the outdoor ceremony. The number of attendees inside the rotunda for the 2025 inauguration is still unknown, but what is known is where the entrances to the Capitol building are located. There's typically 5 different ways to make it into the Capitol building, legally that is. There's the primary entrance, also known as the Capitol Visitor Center, located below the East Front Plaza. This is where visitors and tourists are able to enter the Capitol building, separated from where the lawmakers enter the Capitol. The Senate is able to enter the Capitol building through the north door, which leads directly to the Senate chamber, and then the south door is used by the House members, leading directly to the House chamber. The fourth option for entering the Capitol building is through the extensive network of subway lines and tunnels underground. Lawmakers have their own subway system consisting of 3 different lines. There's the House subway, which connects the Rayburn building to the Capitol building, and then the other 2 lines are on the Senate side, which connect the Capitol with the Russell, Dirksen, and Hart buildings. There's over a dozen other walking tunnels that connect the Capitol to other nearby buildings, typically only being used by lawmakers and their staff. Lastly, there's the press entrances to the Capitol building on the east and west side to have an efficient screening process. During Reagan's 1985 inauguration inside the rotunda, members of Congress, Supreme Court justices, and other VIPs mainly entered through the east front entrance, which is technically the front of the Capitol building. It's likely that Trump's inauguration will also be accessed through this east entrance, as well as through the underground tunnels. These underground tunnels help with security concerns and even provide shelter from the extreme cold expected to hit Washington, D.C. Although this ceremony will likely be a very small private event, what will include many more people and privacy risks is the new inauguration parade that's being held inside Capital One Arena. The inauguration ceremony has been held indoors several times in the past, but there has never been a parade that's moved indoors until 2025. At Capital One Arena, there's 4 entrances. There's the main entrance on 6th Street that's used for sporting events, concerts, and other large-scale events. Secondly, there's a smaller gallery place entrance, which is often used by people arriving via the metro. Then there's a VIP entrance on 7th Street for premium ticket holders for events. And finally, there's the northeast entrance used by employees, performers, athletes, and others that need backstage access. Capital One Arena has a maximum capacity of 20,000 people, and every seat is expected to be filled. Now, because the inauguration parade has never been held there before, there is no data to support how exactly the security could look and what entrances will be used, but if I had to make an educated guess, it's likely that the general public will be able to access the arena through the main 6th Street entrance, and Trump and his other VIP guests will access the arena through the northeast entrance for easy access to backstage areas. Although there is little data on how this extremely rare indoor inauguration will be secured in 2025, there is much more known about how the Secret Service typically protects outdoor inaugurations. The Secret Service deploys many different tactics and strategies to ensure the safety of the president and everyone attending the event. Many of these tactics and strategies are not known to the public, so I traveled down to Washington, D.C. myself about a week before the inauguration to walk the entire parade route and see what preparations are being made to secure this insanely high-risk event. From looking into potential sniper locations, investigating why the streetlights on Pennsylvania Avenue look much different than the rest of DC, and recording as much as I could during my walk through the parade route and around the Capitol building and White House, I wanted to uncover what exactly the Secret Service would have done to protect the president on such a potentially dangerous day. My journey began at the Capitol building, which is where the formal inauguration ceremony typically takes place and where Donald Trump would have been sworn in. During the inauguration ceremony, the president typically walks out of the west front of the U.S. Capitol building, specifically from the doors of the Capitol Rotunda, which lead to the presidential inaugural platform. Skeptics are already saying that Trump being out in the open like this is far too risky of a move.
I think there's got to be a scaled down inauguration because the number one priority is to ensure that President Trump safely takes the oath of office. And can he do that effectively in Washington, standing on the west front of the Capitol with all of these threats? I don't think so.
Part of the reason many are saying this inauguration is too unsafe is because the stakes will be higher than ever before.
Thousands of special guests will attend. These include President Biden, Vice President Harris, several former presidents, Supreme Court justices, and lawmakers from the House and Senate.
There are going to be nearly 250,000 ticketed guests attending the inauguration.
Although 250,000 people may sound like record-breaking inauguration numbers, this wouldn't even come close to past presidential inaugurations. Barack Obama's first inauguration in 2009 had 1.8 million people show up, where crowds extended from the Capitol building all the way down to the Lincoln Memorial. Part of what makes this inauguration in 2025 especially high risk is the fact that other major world leaders may be in attendance.
President-elect Donald Trump has invited Chinese President Xi Jinping to his inauguration next month.
Leaders like Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Argentinian President Javier Milei, and Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban are expected to attend.
Assuming some of these leaders from other countries attend the inauguration, the Secret Service will have even more pressure on their backs, knowing that other countries are closely watching. Walking around the west side of the Capitol building, there were already fences in place separating the public from the construction crews that were on the west lawn. Massive speakers were already in place. Excavators were carrying around heavy objects, including the hundreds of miles of fencing that's being put up, and crews were hard at work making sure that this west lawn was being secured. The inauguration committee also makes sure to practice the actual ceremony well in advance of the big day.
Right now, you're having the bands, you have a full dress rehearsal out here, and if you go to the center, you can see the podium. That's where the swearing-in ceremony will happen.
Given the fact that the swearing-in ceremony occurs in such a highly exposed area, this makes it extremely vulnerable to long-range attacks. Just this past summer in Butler, Pennsylvania, Trump was shot in the ear from a lone gunman laying just about 400 feet away. Luckily, the bullet only grazed Trump's ear, so there was no life-threatening injuries. But given this nearly catastrophic event, the Secret Service will need to put new measures in place to make sure that nothing like this could happen on Inauguration Day. Given that this ceremony is visible from nearly the entire National Mall, all attendees are required to enter the mall through various security checkpoints. Snipers are also typically stationed on the roof of the Capitol, as well as many of the buildings lining the National Mall, ready to take out a potential gunman, like in the event of Trump's Butler, Pennsylvania rally. While most of these snipers on the rooftops are normally visible to the public, what isn't as visible is the undercover agents scattered amongst the crowd.
But some of the security is meant to be nearly invisible. At Union Station, 2 men who could have been waiting for a train were actually DHS behavioral detection officers who blend in with the crowd.
Like at Union Station, the Secret Service, FBI, and other law enforcement agencies deploy a number of undercover agents into the crowd to look for suspicious behavior among the attendees. Undercover agents can quickly get involved if they identify a threat, such as someone carrying a prohibited item or even being aggressive. These agents dress in plain clothes, or will even wear clothing pertaining to the event they are attending, like a MAGA hat for this inauguration. These undercover agents make up just one sector of the record-breaking number of law enforcement personnel that'll be on site for the 2025 inauguration.
There will be approximately 25,000 law enforcement and military personnel on site to secure the event.
Many of this 25,000 will include National Guard troops being deployed to Washington, D.C. These National Guard troops are critical for maintaining order and deterring potential threats, but this extremely high number of troops also comes with unique challenges. With thousands and thousands of National Guard troops, there's always the potential for insider threats. This insider threat is where a potentially compromised or mentally ill guard could use their power to turn against the president or other leaders that they are there to protect. To mitigate this risk, groups of National Guard troops are paired with federal law enforcement and Secret Service members who act as an oversight. Out of the 25,000 National Guard troops deployed for the 2021 inauguration, only 2,000 of them were given a gun with live ammo. The other 23,000 were either given no gun at all or were given a gun with no ammo, serving as a decoy. 2 terrorist attacks took place on the first day of 2025, where former U.S. Army veterans inflicted terror on U.S. citizens. This shows that even those who once dedicated their lives to helping defend the United States can end up becoming radicalized and inflicting terror. With this all in mind, the Secret Service and other law enforcement agencies take the risk of an insider threat extremely seriously.
The biggest threat, I think, for all of us remains the lone actor.
Soon after Trump will be sworn in at the U.S. Capitol, he and his family will join the presidential parade.
This stage, the parade route here along Pennsylvania Avenue, where the real unknown comes in. It's often along here where the president gets out of his car.
As I walked down the start of the parade route on Constitution Avenue, large fencing on the Capitol side was already put in place. On the other side of the street, fencing was laid out in stacks, not yet assembled. For all the inauguration attendees wanting to see the parade, they would have had to access the parade route through 12 different security checkpoints. These checkpoints ensure that nobody can get close to the parade with any prohibited items, and there will even likely be facial recognition software patrolling who is actually coming in and out. This is similar to what TSA does at the airport, where they typically take a picture of your face as another layer of identification. The facial recognition measures are often seen as controversial and an invasion of privacy, but Secret Service says that these tools are only to ensure the safety of the event. As I continued walking down Constitution Avenue, I noticed some workers doing construction on the balconies overlooking the parade route. These high access points are likely where the Secret Service snipers will be located to patrol the crowds below. The more well-known section of the parade then begins once the president enters Pennsylvania Avenue. On Pennsylvania Avenue, all trash cans are typically removed before the parade to ensure that nobody could store an explosive in one of these bins. Although I was here in DC a week before the parade, I still found a few trash cans alongside Pennsylvania Avenue. Additionally, the Secret Service typically covers up any manholes or storm drains along this parade route so that nobody could access the parade from underground. Although the snow was hiding most of the storm drains at the time of me filming this video, I still found several that were open, likely to drain the snowmelt as the temperatures begin to warm up. Walking down Pennsylvania Avenue, I also made sure to pay attention to the streetlights. The streetlights don't hang over Pennsylvania Avenue, so that no explosives could be dropped onto any cars or people that could be making their way down the parade route. If President Trump decides to leave his motorcade and walk down the parade route, this is typically the most dangerous moment of the entire inauguration.
If he's right in this area and gets out of his car and walks, what's going through your mind at that moment?
Well, what's going through my mind is, having faith in the plan and assuming that the agents are doing their job.
The exact time where the president leaves and re-enters the heavily armored car is planned well in advance of the actual parade. As the president walks down the parade route, they are typically accompanied by top Secret Service level agents who would do anything to protect the president. This Secret Service agent to the right of Melania Trump in the 2017 inauguration parade went viral on the internet for his hands seeming to be stuck in this awkward position. Many believe that this is actually a prosthetic hand, and the agent's real arm was on a firearm in the event that he would have to use it very suddenly. The law enforcement personnel along the parade route are also very heavily armed in the case that someone tries breaching the barrier. The president walking down Pennsylvania Avenue with the Capitol in the background serves as a sign of strength and confidence, showing the world that the United States has a strong sense of security and control. The Secret Service is prepared for anything that could happen during this parade and plays out many different scenarios at fake inauguration parades well before the actual event. This includes tear gas simulations and other potential threats where people would be looking to inflict harm against the president.
Turned down Pennsylvania Avenue, and the military aide who was in the right front seat of the car I was riding in turned around and said, "Sir, there's a gas mask under your seat. Get ready to put it on."
As I continued walking down Pennsylvania Avenue, I noticed the FBI headquarters conveniently sits along the parade route.
For the inauguration, the FBI will operate 2 command posts, one at the Washington Field office and one at FBI headquarters.
As the president and his motorcade continue making their way down Pennsylvania Avenue, they end up turning north onto 15th Street Northwest, heading towards the White House. The president will likely be back in his motorcade at this point, so the threat won't be quite as imminent. The parade passes by the Treasury building and then turns left towards the White House. Once the president makes it in front of the White House, he and his family will then make their way up into the presidential viewing stand. When I was in DC, I saw workers finalizing the construction of this viewing stand, as well as the security guarding the entrance and exit points. As I was watching construction workers leave and this state trooper entering, I was surprised to see that the security man guarding the door didn't check to see the state trooper's badge. Nonetheless, the viewing stands for the president and his family being built are most likely bulletproof and will be much more heavily secured on the day of the inauguration. On day 1 of Trump entering the White House, he says he's going to crack down on illegal immigration. Right now, cartels are controlling much of the US southern border using strategies that are completely outsmarting the United States. I did a deep dive on how the cartel operates and how they're sneaking millions of people in illegal possessions into the United States, where you can find that video right here.